Today, the question I think should be, at what point do we start to look at Joe Flacco and say, buddy?
Right now. Like, this is that point. This is the point that we do that we give Joe Flacco his flowers. Because the Icy Hot Bowl, the Unk Bowl, the Men Over 40 Bowl, like whatever you want to call it, was more entertaining than the Super Bowl. Like, that was one of the most fun games, if not Fitz. I'm willing to say right now, that was the most entertaining game that I have watched so far this season. This game was so fun. It was back and forth. And Joe Flacco, look, I think the Bengals realize, look, it's not rocket science that we can bring anybody who is a competent quarterback in here and tell them, hey, there are two guys, two things that you need to know. Chase number 1, Higgins number 5. Take the ball and give it to them. And we'll probably have a good bit of success. And that's exactly what we saw yesterday. Jamar Chase had 23 targets yesterday. 23 targets. That has to be more than Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown have combined for the season at this point. And then you add in the 10 targets for T. Higgins. Those two together, 33 targets. They each had 22 catches combined for almost 300 yards yesterday. It is not rocket science. And I think the Bengals have proven that is why you pay top dollar for those two receivers. That maybe teams around the league would say, we'll pay one top dollar receiver and then figure it out from there. The Bengals are showing you why they invested in those two. I think we're also seeing Mike Tomlin was right. Like, Mike Tomlin was right for essentially calling Andrew Berry, the general manager of the Cleveland Browns, a doofus. And it is so Browns, is it not? It is so Cleveland Browns that we are waking up on Friday morning after Thursday night football in a game that the Browns didn't even play in, and we're calling the Cleveland Browns stupid for doing that, for trading away Joe Flacco. Because, of course, Mike Tomlin kind of called out Andrew Berry at the podium and said, I don't know why you trade a quarterback to a divisional opponent, a divisional rival who is hurting mightily in the quarterback department. We're seeing that Mike Tomlin's concern was right, that Joe Flacco was slinging it last night. 31 of 47, 342 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. He was incredibly clutch. He went toe-to-toe with Aaron Rodgers in a shootout last night. It was an absolute blast. Mike Tomlin was right, people. We should have been listening to him and not making fun of him when he made those comments about Joe Flacco earlier this week.
No. Mike Tomlin was wrong because Mike Tomlin was worried about the wrong things. This game wasn't about Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco had a really good game. That's great. We love quarterbacks. He had a big game. Fine. Why did he have a big game? Because the Pittsburgh Steelers defense sucks. Because the Pittsburgh Steelers defense was a liability. In fact, I'll credit Ross Tucker, who was on the radio broadcast as I was in the car at one point during the game. And he said, as Jamar Chase was running wide open, he said, the problem here is the corners for the Steelers are too old and too slow to cover anybody man-to-man. Jamar Chase is open by 4 or 5 yards on every single route. How did they find Jamar? They found Jamar because this Steelers defense was an abject disaster. Maybe instead of worrying about Joe Flacco, they should have been worrying about what to do on their own defense to try and be able to better counter the best 1-2 or one of the best 1-2 wide receiver combinations in the league. This wasn't some wild quarterback play where you saw things you've never seen. There was some creative play calling. Kudos to Zach Taylor for the quarterback sneak of Joe Flacco. Never would have seen that coming. But at the
That's
end of the
awfully
day,
bold. Running a designed quarterback run for a
Yeah,
40-year-old quarterback who has been in the building for 5 seconds.
That was a
Fortune
bold
favors the
strategy.
bold,
There
my
were Joe
friend.
Flacco moments. Joe Flacco had to take advantage of it. I give all of the credit for that. But the fact is, the problem with the Pittsburgh Steelers last night, and the problem that is going to should scare Steelers fans for the rest of the year, has nothing to do with Joe Flacco and everything to do with the most expensive defense in the entire NFL laid that egg on Thursday night to that quarterback in that stadium. Like, that is not the Pittsburgh Steelers we're used to. If that's the Steelers defense we're going to trot out for the rest of the year, we finally got the definitive answer. We've been asking on this show for 2 weeks, why does Vegas still believe in the Baltimore Ravens? The real answer, maybe the real question should have been, why doesn't Vegas believe in the Pittsburgh Steelers? And as much as I've been saying it's the schedule, what we learned last night is it's this defense. If you bank on this Pittsburgh Steelers defense to win you a division, you're going to lose your money.
Look, I don't disagree with you in that. And to your point about the defense, 1000%. Because when you pay your defense more than any other team in the league is playing their defense, you don't expect to give up 33 points and 350 passing yards to Joe Flacco. Jalen Ramsey. Have you ever seen that meme of the woman outside? I think it's outside of a Popeyes. She's a Popeyes employee, and like her head's in her hand. She's smoking a cigarette on the bench. Like she just looks like she's had a day. That's Jalen Ramsey. Like that was Jalen Ramsey after the game last night. He was getting absolutely torched down after down last night. And I did see from Next Gen Stats that Joe Flacco had about over 2.5 seconds in the pocket almost every single play, an average of 2.5 seconds in the pocket. When you have TJ Watt on your defensive line, there is zero excuse for Joe Flacco to have that much time. Per Next Gen Stats, he had about a 20% pressure rate in the pocket. 20% pressure rate when you're paying your defense that much, when you have elite stars defensively, like the Pittsburgh Steelers do, at least on that defensive front. That's not an issue of talent. That's all an issue of scheming. That's an issue of coaching. And that's an issue that I think we've seen from the Steelers defense really all season long, but they just continued to win games, so it's kind of gotten overlooked. But what we haven't looked into really, or what we haven't peeled back the curtain on enough, is the quarterbacks that they were playing, or the teams that they have been playing, the teams that they have been beating, that they gave up 30 plus points to Justin Fields and the New York Jets, but it doesn't matter because we found a way to win. Then maybe Aaron Rodgers is covering up a lot of issues behind the curtain on this Pittsburgh Steelers defense, and Joe Flacco just kind of revealed all of them, because that Pittsburgh Steelers defense it's not good enough, period. But especially considering how much money they're investing into it, Fitz. And I think it just goes to show, one, the coaching isn't good enough, and two, you can pay guys like top corners and you can pay guys at the top of their position group, but that doesn't mean that they're going to deliver to the best of the ability of that position group.
And that's why the question, like, is this just a speed bump or is the sky falling? The sky is falling at this point for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I think part of the reason
the sky is falling.
Part of the reason the sky is falling is that when you look at all of this, you look at the schedule that's upcoming, you look at the way that they played in this game, you looked at the fact that their pass rush couldn't get after it, you look at the fact that the back end of their defense couldn't cover, because it really felt like Flacco's approach was, the minute I get the ball, I'm going to run backwards 3 yards and just going to flick it, and Jamar's going to be there. You look at what's coming up with the Packers, the Colts, the Chargers. They got this Bengals team again. Then they got a Bears team that's playing a lot better right now. Like, nothing gets easier for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And then maybe, to me, Caroline, the most important part, as the ardent supporter of Mike Tomlin through all of the chaos of the Pittsburgh Steelers, and the number of times I've said, hey, Steelers fans, appreciate what you've got. You can't twist this any other way. The entire Steelers team got out-coached last night. When the Bengals figured out Jamar Chase was going to get that open and then said, you know what? We're just going to run this play over and over. We're going to figure out a way to get the ball to Jamar Chase over and over and over again. And there ain't a damn thing you can do about it. Like, at some point, and when we're sitting here yelling about the tuck rule needs to go away because it's too easy, it's too executable for the Eagles, that was Jamar Chase last night. He was the tuck rule for the Bengals. Everything they wanted to do, they did. And that man, Tomlin, had zero answers. That defense had zero adjustments. They didn't find any way to disrupt it. They didn't find any way to jam him. They didn't find any way to figure out how to bracket the coverage differently. They didn't switch to more zone instead of man. All these things that would be difficult in the game to do. But if you were prepared for it, you'd be okay. There was never an adjustment by the Pittsburgh Steelers that said, all right, we see you. You're going to try and beat us this way. We're not going to let you do it. They just sat there and took that beating like they were being bullied instead of being the bully. And that's different for Pittsburgh.
That's not a Mike Tomlin coach team. And as many flowers as I'd like to give Joe Flacco, because he 1000% deserves it, also the Bengals were able to do really whatever they wanted in the run game. Chase Brown had over 100 yards rushing last night. He averaged almost 10 yards a crack on the ground. Coming into this game, Chase Brown didn't have a single game on the ground over 50 yards. And he ran for over 100 last night. That is such an epic failure on behalf of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And look, Aaron Rodgers had a great game last night too. 23 of 34, 250 yards, 4 touchdowns. He had the 2 picks. but he also slung it 60+ yards in that last 3 seconds of the game last night. Like, Aaron Rodgers has still got it. Like, Aaron Rodgers is still putting his team in position to win football games. I mean, when you put up 31 points in the National Football League, like, that's a game that you should be winning. So, Aaron Rodgers had a solid game last night, but this defense is going to fail Aaron Rodgers. This defense is going to fail a competent Steelers offense.
The Steelers are 4-2, and I will remind everybody that they have a win over the Jets, who suck. They got a win over the Patriots early in the season while they're getting their sea legs for them. I think that game
that
would
was
look
a different
right
Patriots team.
A different Patriots team. They get a win over the Vikings with their backup quarterback in, and then they get a win over the Browns, who suck. So if you're wondering why this guy is falling, the proof is in the pudding on how Pittsburgh got to where they were.